Here's what's coming up on The World Today. US President Joe Biden says America will defend Taiwan if China attacks. EU leaders bid farewell to outgoing German Chancellor Angela Merkel after nearly 16 years. Plus, actor Alec Baldwin fatally shoots women with popcorn on a movie set. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shibuale. US President Joe Biden says America would defend Taiwan if China attacked. The comment is an apparent departure from a long-held US foreign policy position. The US has a law which requires it to help Taiwan defend itself, but it pursues a policy where it is deliberately vague about what it would actually do if China were to attack. Well, responding to President Biden's comments, China's foreign ministry urges the United States to avoid sending any wrong signals to proponents of Taiwanese independence. Beijing says it has no room for concessions when it comes to its core interest, adding that no external interference is allowed. China says Taiwan is the most sensitive and important issue in its ties with the United States and has denounced what it calls collusion between Washington and Taipei. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has offered the United States resolute commitment to NATO and broad support both to Taiwan and the EU. Speaking at the NATO Defense Summit in Brussels, he said the United States would continue to help Taiwan with the capabilities it needs to defend itself. He also responded positively to the European Union's defense plans.
The Euro-Atlantic area is most secure when we work together through NATO. So today, I want to reiterate America's resolute commitment to NATO and our NATO allies. I'm looking forward to working with Secretary General Stoltenberg and my fellow defense ministers to ensure that NATO remains the unparalleled collective security organization. We're going to keep working together to strengthen the ramparts of peace. You know, nobody wants to see cross-strait issues come to blows, certainly not President Biden, and there's no reason that it should. You've heard us say this a number of times, and I'll say it again. We remain committed to our One China policy in keeping with the Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 assurances, and the 6 communiques. As we've done over multiple administrations, we'll continue to help Taiwan with the sorts of capabilities that it needs to defend itself, and so we'll stay focused on those things.
Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Maria Bird joins us now for more on this. Maria, let's begin with the president's comments on Taiwan. He says the U.S. Would defend the country if China attacked. Does this signal a change in policy when it comes to Taipei?
Well, you know, it appears as if it does change in some aspects because he was very clear and direct on that topic. But as we know, the U.S. has supported and been in support of humanitarian rights in Taiwan and in other places across the world as well. And we know there has been growing tension, not just with the Biden administration, but with the prior Trump administration between the U.S. and China. So this is not new, the tension there. But as the president's White House staff came out later on stating that this was not a change in policy, and they focused in on how the U.S. has constantly supported the independence of Taiwan. And so that's at the time where the U.S. is making their stance, despite what appeared to be a very direct and almost defensive comments by the president toward Taiwan.
Well, China has responded to this, urging the U.S. to act and speak cautiously. But how has Taiwan responded, especially with tensions high after Beijing flew dozens of warplanes into its air defense zone?
The response at this time, I think, is, just the real question: will there be an attack? I think that is the question. I think that the U.S. and its allies are watching, and that speaks to some of why the president was so direct in his comments. And so the real issue at this time is, did that signal something that we could see in days to come? And we know that China believes that the U.S. and its allies are potentially looking to, I don't know, take over or somehow secure the island. And I think China wants to clearly have a stake to say that that island is very much a part of mainland China, and that they should fall within Chinese guidelines and principles. And so this is going to be, I think, something that the U.S. is going to be closely watching, and we're going to continue to see Australia, China, and Britain be in communication on this issue.
And speaking of that, the AUKUS Pact is also brewing tensions. Just speak to us about that and where the US, UK, and Australia's position is on that so far.
Well, the three countries are in a security partnership. That is their number one focus, is security. And so this security partnership, and the U.S. has come out and stated that Australia will not move forward with any kind of nuclear testing or nuclear issues toward Taiwan. And so I think that what this is really looking at is looking at how to best secure that Indo-Pacific region. And that's a lot of what you're seeing ACOS come out and state, that it's really about security.
All right, then, Maria, thanks a lot for bringing us up to speed.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, to the EU summit, leaders have gathered for a second day to discuss the issues of digital transition and migration. The sensitive and diverse issue of handling refugees and migrants reaching EU territory is high on the political agenda of the bloc, which has recently noted increased arrivals via Belarus. Arriving for the meeting, Lithuania's president called on the EU to swiftly overhaul its asylum laws.
We are looking about refreshing or the thinking of our migration and asylum policy guidelines, which were set several years ago under different circumstances. Because at that time it was really humanitarian crisis, but not weaponizing the migration as a tool against the sovereign countries of European Union. And we also should talk about physical fence or physical border, which is extremely needed as a short-term measure in order to deal with this crisis, because nobody knows what will happen tomorrow. Maybe there will be 3,000, 4,000 or 5,000 migrants staying at the border at the same time, or trying to cross the border in different places. Just we will be not ready to take this challenge. So this is the reason why we have to be decisive this time again.
Meanwhile, leaders paid warm tributes to Angela Merkel as they wound up the summit, which was her 107th as Germany's chancellor over nearly 16 years. Before the leaders of the 27 EU countries got down to business, they watched a 2-minute video of her summit highlights, and she was presented with a farewell gift representing the Europa building where summits are held. If German political parties now in talks following last month's election fail to form a ruling coalition by mid-December, Merkel will be back in Brussels for another summit. But several leaders took the opportunity to say how much they would miss the leader of Europe's largest economy. Let's take a look at the COVID-19 situation around the world now. Daily deaths in Russia hits a record high for a fourth straight day, plus Australia's Melbourne exits its sixth lockdown. Here's the global update.
Russia has reported yet more daily cases of COVID-19 infections and deaths, with 37,141 new cases and 1,064 people dying in the past 24 hours. It's the second successive daily case record and the fourth straight day of record deaths this week. a surge that has prompted authorities to reintroduce restrictions and renew calls for people to get vaccinated. The Australian state of Victoria has announced that hotel quarantine will be scrapped for international travellers from November as state capital Melbourne emerges from the world's longest lockdown.
90.5% of Victorians have now had a first dose, and 71.1% of Victorians aged over 16 are fully protected by one of the COVID-19 vaccines. That's why today we can end the lockdown. That's why today we can begin really meaningful steps to open up our city and state, to have our freedoms back.
From November the 1st, fully vaccinated international travellers arriving in the cities of Sydney and Melbourne will no longer need to quarantine. Under more relaxed rules, restaurants and cafes can reopen with up to 20 people indoors and 50 outdoors, all of whom must be vaccinated, while 10 guests can gather at homes. Masks will remain mandatory. In neighbouring New Zealand, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says the country will end its strict coronavirus lockdown measures and restore more freedoms only when 90% of its eligible population is fully vaccinated.
The more people who are vaccinated, the harder it is for COVID to spread through communities quickly and find our most vulnerable. That means while we used to say that we needed to stay home to save lives, we now need to be vaccinated to save lives.
Over in Iran, mass Friday prayers have resumed in Tehran after a 20-month hiatus due to COVID-19 pandemic. The resumption comes as authorities warn of a sixth wave of the coronavirus, which has so far claimed 124,928 lives in Iran and afflicted more than 5.8 million. Worshippers had to heed social distancing and use face masks during the gathering.
Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says there is nothing to indicate that the country needs another COVID-19 lockdown. Mr. Johnson adds that rising levels of COVID-19 infections were predicted in government models and they do not herald a return of tough lockdown measures. He's now encouraging people to get their booster shots.
I think that people should be coming forward with the same spirit of determination to get their boosters as we saw earlier on this year. It's a very good thing to do. It gets you a huge amount of protection, and we always expected that we would see numbers rise right about now. That is happening, and you've also got to take into account the waning effectiveness of the first two jabs. So get your boosters now.
Away from the COVID-19 pandemic, nurses in Eswatini are refusing to treat police officers as they accuse them of shooting colleagues during a pro-democracy rally on Wednesday. According to medical officials, 30 nurses were injured as the police and army opened fire and a young bystander was killed. Pro-democracy protests in Africa's last absolute monarchy, formerly known as Swaziland, have swept the country since June. The government, which denies that security forces use live ammunition, has now banned all demonstrations. But today, nurses were protesting at 3 hospitals. Still to come on the programme. Britain's Queen Elizabeth back at her desk following hospital stay. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, hundreds of workers from the state-owned ports company have stormed its headquarters, breaking windows, burning furniture, and clashing with police over what they say are more than 3 years of unpaid wages. The police fired cans of tear gas into the building in the capital, Kinshasa, as the workers from the Commercial Society of Ports and Transports danced around a pile of burning furniture on the front steps and threw rocks at the officers. It's not immediately clear if anyone was injured in the clashes. The workers have been on strike since October the 15th. They say the government owes the firm $207 million and they've not been paid in more than 3 years.
Dans leur jeep, 2 motos m'ont percuté et ils m'ont fait monter de force.
Has died and a man has been injured after actor Alec Baldwin fired a prop gun on a New Mexico film set for the 19th century Western movie Rust. 42-year-old Alina Hutchins was shot while working on the set as director of photography. She was flown to hospital by helicopter but died of her injuries. The man, 48-year-old director Joel Souza, was taken from the scene at Bonanza Creek Ranch by an ambulance. Police say they're investigating and that no charges have been filed. They're trying to establish what type of projectile left the prop gun and how. The FBI says human remains found in a Florida park on Wednesday are those of Brian Laundrie, the finance of murdered blogger Gabby Petito. The body of Mr. Laundrie, who had been missing for over a month, was identified using dental records. Mr. Laundrie, who was a person of interest in Gabby Petito's death, returned to Florida last month from a joint road trip without his partner. A body was later found in Wyoming, where the couple had been traveling. And now Britain's Queen Elizabeth is back at her desk at Windsor Castle after she spent a night in hospital for the first time in years for what Buckingham Palace termed preliminary investigations. The world's oldest and longest reigning monarch, who cancelled an official trip to Northern Ireland on Wednesday, had been told to rest by her medical staff. On the streets of London, people expressed concern and sent well wishes to the 95-year-old.
So obviously on a personal level, it's an individual. You feel for anyone who's in ill health. I don't think it's a particularly great time for her to be ill for the country. But obviously, you know, there's everything in place that if something does happen, then it'll be absolutely fine and taken care of. But she is doing rather well. She's in her late 90s, so these things are probably going to happen.
Well, she's had the good innings.
Yeah.
So these things happen to everyone. So all the best for her. Hope she gets well soon.
I mean, we're Canadian, so we're part of the Commonwealth. I have huge respect for the Queen. I think she's done an amazing job. She's devoted her life to the country and the Commonwealth, for that matter. So yes, I mean, she's an older woman, and we are concerned for her health.
Excuse me.
And Dubai has officially inaugurated the world's largest and highest Ferris wheel as the city seeks to reinforce its status as a major tourism hub. The observation wheel was officially opened to the public with a lavish drone and fireworks show. Located on the Blue Waters Island, the Dubai Eye stands at 250 meters tall, while it can take 1,750 visitors on one rotation, which takes just over 30 minutes.
It's the largest Ferris wheel, so pretty excited to be here and to be part of the history.
Yeah, currently it's the sunset time and we're very excited. It's going to be fireworks, it's going to be crazy, and it's going to be a history made. It's like one of the largest Ferris wheel that we're going to see. and it's going to be amazing.
And now in India, two brothers are turning heads, literally, with their creative yet realistic hair designs, which depict everything from the Taj Mahal to celebrities on their customers' heads. Take a look.
29-year-old Rajwinder Singh Sidhu and his 31-year-old brother Gawinder have become local celebrities in the town of Mandi Dabwali in northern India with their eye-catching art. They pride themselves on being able to depict anything from Hollywood and Bollywood celebrities to international sports stars, as well as favorites like Mickey Mouse and King Kong on people's scarves.
We have made hair designs of various celebrities and monuments, and people really love it.
The finished result looks almost like a tattoo, but will wash out in a few days.
Today, I got a shaved design of the Taj Mahal. The monument is very beautiful, and with this design, I will stand out.
A complex motif can take up to 4 hours to design, while the simpler ones are finished in an hour and cost between $20 to $30. The brothers started their barber business around 7 years ago when they decided not to join their father's profession and become truck drivers. They decided to do something more creative and put their love for drawing to use. Now people come especially to the brothers to get their hair designs done, usually for special social occasions. With their fame spreading, Rajwinder says they hope to go global someday.
We have some plans for the future, and we're working hard to introduce new things. We have plans of taking our work to an international level. Hair design competitions are held in the US and Mexico, and we'll try and participate there and represent India to make our country proud.
But before taking on the world, they're contemplating moving to a bigger city like the capital, New Delhi, or India's entertainment capital, Mumbai, for more exposure.
Well, art definitely comes in different forms. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shuboale. Have a lovely weekend.